It's Wednesday. It's February 21st, 2023. Um, I I ripped my lip this morning, so now it's got this unsightly whatever, but I still have words to do. So I'm inside the ONE with the monetary system, the United States of America, and the Federal Reserve with General George Washington, first president. That's what they teach in my level of school. He was also a general. Um, and then there's this with the White House on the back of it, um, a modification, but this is the pattern of um, a prop that whatever and whatever. Um, so I'm watching the televised CBS this morning. I put up, actually, we'll preface it as this. This morning, first thing, Lewis comes up, my father, and shows me a video of a moving cactus and um, different broad spectrum of reactions of the children when the cactus actually moves and performs. Um, Spiritually, with what I've got going on, I find it reassuring. I find it hilarious, actually. It made me giggle. Um, Knowing that I'm stuck somewhere between the in God we trust, the public trust, and then my craving for the safety of the arm of the one, which I've never been able to properly wed or marry. And so I'm living in this, like, put on the polyamorous face and just go about your day. And I'm like, but am I going to get in trouble if I'm polyamorous with just everyone with with the polygamy? I mean, like, I don't want to get in trouble with the polygamy department, but I again have this desire to be with, like, the one, and then there's like this executive function, and then there's like planning, and like, how do you speak up without, and then I'm like, I don't even know who the in-laws and the outlaws and how they, and then I have to worry about how other people see themselves and identify, and I'm like looking at them like, all right, see, if the one was at my back, like gigantic, like, and then there's that picture that somebody sent me in January on my that fed me on Facebook of, like, the gray and the actress, and I never saw the movies of 50 Shades of Grey, and then the pleasure room being the cactus. That's why, like, the baby and the moving cactus just really hit me in a funny spot. And then, like, Lynn was like, you find babies crying funny? And I'm like, see, the way you portray it, no. I was like, but where I was in headspace for what I got going on, it was funny in the moment. I was like, but now you just ruined it, because now it's like, that's somebody's function in the big wide world of the United States. It just doesn't happen to be mine. Um, So this morning, I put on, and it started with a reporter from London who does not look monetary familial to London. And I'm like, and I'm receiving this message in New York, and I'm just like on the CBS network where none of the anchors or the desks, and I'm like, to me personally, if I had the privacy of a one-on-one conversation with my executive function and director, I don't want to be in prison because somebody is publicizing and allowing these children this free speech inside media, I'm like, I don't want, like, I don't want to be criminalized for that, because they're acting polyamorous, which I clearly would not be. So the Justice Department had an easier time at prosecuting criminals and like white crime all the way down between God level and like the public level. But I'm having this struggle with my generation and the previous generation with their compliance. So that puts this into a very precarious situation for myself at the moment. And I sit here and I'm like, now that would be King Charles in charge of his media and sending department, the King Charles III in London. But the receivership department of the transmission here, and how they allow this journalist or reporter who does not look indigenous to London or England or anything Northern European nor North American, that causes a little bit of, I don't know. Um, I'm just making a note of it. Um, so and courteously, um, so not disrespectfully. And then I'm watching, so I go to the end of the CBS. It's E83. It just so happens to be an 8 and a 3, whatever, and whatever. So then I'm going from like the last story and rewinding backwards, because they end on Oppenheimer. And then if I rewind it, it's a story about, well, there's a cyber story, but then there's a story about a really brave Dutch scientist who's swimming with the largest snakes in the Amazon in bravery. And then it wrote, if I rewind it a little bit more, it talks about young boys and essentially like dietary restrictions and like almost starvation, which brings up a national security concern of mine with where I arrived in 1978, and my entire generation. Because I know in like at in I've heard, um I've heard very like everything else, wishy-washy, that there's something called an imperial diet, and nutrition, but that's again like at kingdom level, and how those get fed and whatever. And knowing that I did not have such luxury in my privilege, even though I'm monetarily familial, um, and there's several different branches and lines of monetarily familial. And for some reason in New York, I don't know why I was withheld from receiving any compensation funds or tender, or like being kept in that close, even though I'm RH sensitive. Um, and then there's this, but the United States level doesn't really speak of that. United States talks about capital, and business and corporations and things. So that goes into the whatever category between a one and a TWO, in a private whatever. Um, and then so I'm watching these things, and then the last story, if I rewind it, because it went in a different direction, which, and it ends for me, if I rewind it, from the Oppenheimer, the Dutch snake, the biggest like woo scientist, like scariest one in charge of like the really big stuff, like, and then I go all the way back. It ends on something that's calling itself a Russell, which I don't want James Russell to be like upset, because again, it's wearing his last name and he definitely does not adorn the same epigenetics. So I don't know how to like properly document that because he was a way of being I rather appreciated um, in whatever at Keene buildings. So across the street from Elm. Again, not sure. That was just directional in Whaling Town that I grew up in that had a turkey lane. But again, it seems with the right house has gone with, and that right house is spelled with a W, not an R. So, but again, this is more familial talk than, and I don't know how to get to my one since they've withheld me from being able to live a life on his arm in his house and being treated the way an RH sensitive should be treated. Um, so I'm watching this, and so it ends with this personality that they're awarding a Vitrola to in something that they call, I think, a Grammy. Um, and just the way that and then if I play it in the correct order, the way that the CBS put it on, it tells one story. And then if I play it the opposite way, like the way it was lived and then the way the devil does it to really drive home a message about just how unhappy I am on my time in America, it really, again, when you're talking to like the in God we trust as a public trust in God, I think the devil needs to have a conversation with the way life was lived, and then what, like in this, like what's utopia and then what's dystopian. Yeah, there's like this disconnect between like perfect, got it perfect, and got perfect life, and then the way that my performance went, so at the in between. So I'm just going to put up that in the devil format just to make sure God got the devil's message. And here we are at See the BS in the morning with Oppenheimer. This is what they put on. If I rewind it, there's something about cyber sleuths. No idea what those are. I'm not in chat rooms and whatever. Oh my gosh, here's the supersized snake. I mean, he's literally in the tank with them swimming. 140 pounds and has a so brave. The size of a human's. I don't know why the guy got in the water. I really don't know what he's doing. I mean, honestly, is he wearing a shirt and tie? That's his research project there. I guess that's what they submitted to the peer-reviewed diversity journal. That anyway, I don't know. Oh no, okay, no. Just that. So yeah, 15. And again, like in quantum string theory, and like at the universe and the galaxy level, and like who gets to be an astronaut, and why are some of us just left in a cloud of solar energy that we really can't explain to ourselves, feeling like they're aging at some radical rate, and going outside and then having to feast my eyes on the population. It doesn't work. It just, in this format, the way that this area, it's not working. Scientists. A first grader. Then they have this story on Jefferson County Public Schools, and they have these two. And this is a great story on the forefront of like bus driver, the kid had no pajamas. So like he bought him pajamas, drove back to school. Like that's on the lived. But if the devil was going to speak on the story in the backwards sense, I'm just letting you know when the greatest mathematician I've ever met, which is he called himself Mr. He didn't even call himself Doctor. Mr. Guido at St. Dominic's. When he was my teacher, my professor, um, there was two children. I can't really tell the difference of where their originations are from, but one of them called themselves a PJ. He called himself PJ Gregoretti. He should be in the yearbook. That poses a problem. Later on, I met a real PJ, the correct familial to my monetary system type of PJ. And that made more sense. Like PJ Gregoretti in ninth grade mathematics made no sense to me whatsoever. What was the devil trying to like portray in my local Catholic school? So again, like the story, the way it is here, the way they bring it up, oh, it just warms your heart. Somebody doing something so nice. And then there's the underbelly of this beast, and how people cross paths, and what does it really mean? What was the purpose of it? And how are they trying to bastardize in order to confound and confuse and destroy? Which is where I feel I am at the year 2024. So here we are. Who is usually all smiles. But I thought it interesting they chose Jefferson County and a PJ reference. About a lot. And here it goes to young boys and eating disorders. Back here, it it shows like that whole like if we had an interplanetary conversation with the connections in like a quantum string or a quark or a boson or whatever at I don't have anybody to speak to these things about, but like I've learned some of the words. I took out some books from the library. I mean, I'm trying to connect the best way that I can at like a whatever, whatever, whatever. Um, but this I thought was really interesting because this goes back at like a different, like if we're having an EO me EO and an IO to an ME to an IO ratio at an IM, like where nutrition diet really matters. And some of the children got to feast that way. I did not. I'm also not feasting my eyes on anything that I am really like, I need to write home about. And if that endangers my life, that is not a life lived. That is entrapment and a whole lot of other fancy words I've heard in the background that I don't practice law. So again, where are the in-laws and the outlaws? I heard an argument on the media about Nikki Haley because I'm like, listen, one, she's not familial to the monetary system. She's not a Protestant. That's two. And then but she has a purpose and a function inside this executive office and administration at the moment, for which I do not question. However, she's got a husband who's working in Africa. So now, is that an outlaw or is that an outlier to interior security? Because again, don't want to, like an LYER as opposed to an LIAR. That's where English gets really trippy. But and I don't want to start a fight with an outlaw or an outlier, being that I'm in this situation in New York and there's some real serious whatever and whatever, whatever between a one and a two that has to get going. A lot of things. Video games, often, sometimes sports. It's a matter of So here it says signs of body image concerns. Is this a safe conversation to bring up between a 1 and a 2? Because about like hometown and like inappropriate touching by other nations to your visual construct. I don't know. I mean, like maybe. It says obsessive workout routines, excessive replaces time with friends, exercise replaces time with friends, severe dietary restrictions. Like, how do you know that you're in trouble of within your own bounds? Appearance dictates self-esteem, distorted self-perception. And then underneath it says young boys and eating disorders. Like, now, is that for my sons at this point? Because my whole existence here in New York has been somehow bastardized, it feels like. So here we are. It's we're like session, two separate resolutions. Okay, so here they are. This this is a person named Russell, her last name, and she's holding this award, like a Grammy, but it's like a Vitrola. And again, yesterday they had something about a Victoria and a Monet. I'm like, that's neither a Monet painting nor a Victorian. So I'm real careful with like if this they're calling it a Russell, just like a Gail King. It's not a king that I know of, but it's like they really get very messy here with their painting and like who they're upsetting and who I mean like but they're like real people at the public level that are getting hurt, not that the in God we feast off of the imperialistic methods. I mean, like that again, like I don't know how they decided to like hand that out between public trust and the in God we trust, but it's a fair question at the moment. Were put forward in the Tennessee House. Oh, and then look at Russell and fellow home state band that would be Paramore for each winning Grammys. But House Republicans blocked the resolution to honor Russell while allowing the resolution for Paramore to pass. So something about Tennessee, and then they're going to have his representative up there. Haley Williams called the move, quote, blatant racism. In a statement, Republican caucus chair, that's Jeremy Faison, told CBS Mornings, quote, members routinely come to me with questions about items on the consent calendar, which was the case for this particular resolution. But he did not elaborate on what those questions were. Allison Russell is with us at the table, and we just want to say first, congratulations on your Grammy win. Despite so again, oh, and then let's go back to let's rewind it even further to this London thing going on that gets confusing. Because again, like when I really think about it, like isn't television imperialistic science academy anyhow? So why is it not following the strictest protocols for like monetary and dietary restrictions? Why is it so loose artistic fanfare? It I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. So here, this is the person, and he's out of London. So again, like that gets real confusing, but I don't know. Um, Again, there's a lot of stuff that they have not talked about, and I don't really know about. Um, Yesterday, I had made note of something going on in the UN. It was a non-familial or non-monetary representative at the UN in New York, seated as a representative speaking on behalf of the United States. And I'm like, now is that the 48 states? Or because that gets confusing. I don't know what's on her agenda, how it got set, and what they're discussing. And then Algeria was there, and then China was there. Oh, and Guyana was there. And I'm like, but it's in New York, and yesterday I had a sunlight issue. Today it seems to be a little bit better. Um, Although I did notice on the CBS this morning, they pan out and do a skyline shot of all the skyscrapers, and you can actually see like a pulse of light over. My camera doesn't necessarily pick it up, but when I'm visually watching it, I checked with somebody else in the room, and they agree. They see that pulse of light over Manhattan that the TV is showing. And it's happened several times. I don't know what that's, again, I don't know if that's satellite communications. I have no idea. Um, but it just, all of these things just seem really important. Um, that PJ Gregoretti thing seems very important in hindsight, looking backwards, um, in self-analysis of why would the Catholics even let. And I have to say, when I went to Italy when I was 18 on Italian soil in my father's hometown, they for some reason had two persons from I don't know where who spoke Italian, but I didn't speak Italian, come and meet with Angela and I. No idea. I mean, they were not familial. So, not sure what that was about. And I don't know what country they came from. But they did not look Italian. So, or at least they were not Aronsani up by they weren't Stellapini. So, that was whatever, no, whatever, confusing back then. But it just seems to be like this reoccurring theme of incidents of like crossing paths for some reason. Um, in like I guess a quantum string theorist essay, it would make more sense if I had such an educated or academic in order to actually write out the schematics and the star chart of how this has gone out or how this has gone down. Um, it's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361. And for me, I've just got my feet, they're just above the whatever. And I put out, Star Trek has this like holographic reference to her lab that she walks into. I almost referenced that like my television being able to access it, but then like that starlight, and then they used a James Webb telescope reference with like a cloud. I mean, it looks so picturesquely beautiful, unless you're speaking of like a energy field cloud and then like one starlight transmitting, which is kind of how I feel like in an abstract, another dimensional way of explaining what my cell phone transmission might look like in like a galaxy full of like points of light that nobody could ever figure out. And then there's like that one point of light somewhere that has whatever going on. That's kind of how I think of my reference in my journal or my whatever, with my health update and where I'm at in New York in the schematics of my life frame. Um, and then they like had this movie reference with X-Men, about one of the X-Men, I can't remember which one, and he sits down and he puts on this helmet, and he's all of a sudden like in some kind of planetarium, and he's able to find whoever he's looking for, kind of like that. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza.